I honestly didn't think hosting a simple sleepover would end with me being accused of bullying a child. It started over flatbread. Yeah, flatbread. It was 9 p.m. I had just spent a fortune on takeout for my son and his friends, and one kid, let's call him Ryan, decided the menu wasn't good enough. He demanded I order a second dinner just for him. When I refused, he tried to turn the whole room against me, but that wasn't even the worst part. The real nightmare started when his mom got involved. My son had 3 friends stay over on a Saturday night after they finished a long weekend tournament. Everyone was exhausted but in a good mood, and the plan was honestly just to let them hang out, play games, watch movies, and crash in the living room. My wife was working an overnight shift, so it was just me managing everything. I didn't want to overcomplicate anything. I made dinner earlier, everyone ate, and I figured that would be enough until morning. It wasn't. Around 9 p.m. they started saying they were hungry again. Not surprising considering they're all grown and had been running around all day. I wasn't about to cook another full meal that late, so I ordered a large share-style meal from a place that does mixed platters. It came with a few different flatbreads, fries, chicken strips, and several dips. There was a lot of food, enough that I expected leftovers. My daughter came downstairs when the food arrived and sat with everyone. At first, everything was normal. The boxes were opened, everyone grabbed plates, and people started reaching for things. One of the boys, I'll call him Ryan, immediately started asking questions before anyone had even taken a bite. What sauce was this? What was on that flatbread? Why were there vegetables on one of them? Who chose the toppings? Why wasn't there more plain food? I answered at first because I assumed he was just curious or picky in a normal way.
Kids do that sometimes.
But it didn't stop. He kept lifting pieces up, putting them back down, asking if something had onions, asking if the chicken touched the sauce, asking why the fries were seasoned. The other boys were already eating by then and mostly ignoring it. I told everyone to just take what they wanted and leave the rest. My daughter grabbed the last slice of the plain flatbread. There were still 2 other types left, plus a full tray of fries and chicken. Ryan immediately asked where the rest of the plain ones were. I said that was the only one. He said he only eats plain food. I told him there were plenty of other options. He said he didn't like stuff mixed together. At first I thought it would end there, but he kept circling back to it. He asked why I didn't order more plain ones if there were guests coming over. I told him I ordered a mix so everyone would have something. He said guests should get first choice. I told him everyone grabbed food at the same time and nobody was assigning anything. By then my daughter was already eating. Ryan started asking her if she could just give him half because she could have plain food anytime. She said no and kept eating. He kept watching her while she ate, which made things uncomfortable enough that my son told him to just grab something else. Ryan then asked me directly if I could order another plain one just for him. It was already late. Delivery times were long and there was still a table full of food untouched. I said no, that there was plenty there already. He said his mom would never expect a guest to eat something they didn't want. I said nobody was forcing him to eat anything, but I wasn't ordering another meal because he didn't like the choices. He went quiet for a bit, then sat there with an empty plate while everyone else ate. After a few minutes, he started sighing loudly. Not subtle at all. He said he guessed he just wouldn't eat tonight. Nobody responded at first. Then he said it again, louder, like he wanted a reaction. That's when I told him to stop acting like a brat and either eat what was there or leave it alone because he was dragging the whole atmosphere down. I didn't yell at first, but I was definitely firm. He froze, stared at me, and said I couldn't call him that. I said I wasn't calling him a brat as a person, I was saying the behavior right then was bratty. He said I had to feed him because he was a guest. I said there was food everywhere and I couldn't make him eat it. After that he barely touched anything. The rest of the night felt awkward. The other boys kept playing games, but it was obvious everyone noticed the tension. Ryan mostly stayed quiet and on his phone. At one point I noticed he was messaging someone, but I didn't think much of it. The next morning pickup was uncomfortable. His mom was polite but short with me. I figured Ryan had probably complained, but I assumed that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Later that evening she called me and said Ryan told her I called him a brat and refused to feed him. I explained exactly what happened and told her there had been more than enough food. She said that didn't matter and that adults shouldn't speak to kids that way. I said I told him to stop acting like one after he kept arguing about food for 20 minutes. Her tone changed after that. She said he felt humiliated in front of everyone and that I should have handled it differently. I said I wasn't going to negotiate over flatbread late at night when there were other kids trying to enjoy themselves. She said I embarrassed her son. I said her son embarrassed himself by refusing to drop it. That's when the call turned into both of us talking over each other. She said I sounded aggressive. I told her she was getting worked up over something small. She said I clearly didn't like her kid. I said that wasn't true, but I didn't like the behavior. Voices were raised at that point. She said I shouldn't host sleepovers if I couldn't handle kids being picky. I said picky wasn't the issue. Arguing nonstop was. She said I was being defensive. I said she was being unreasonable. The conversation ended abruptly when she said she'd be talking to other parents because she didn't like how I handled things. After that, things started leaking out through the kids. My son said Ryan told people I yelled at him and called him ungrateful. Another kid apparently told his parents it got heated. I didn't yell at the beginning, but by the end my voice definitely wasn't calm anymore. Then my wife got a message through Facebook from Ryan's mom saying she was concerned about how things were handled. That irritated me because she had already talked to me directly, and now it felt like she was trying to reframe the story through someone else. My wife asked me what happened, and I told her everything. She said she understood why I got frustrated, but also said maybe the wording made it worse. Update 1. About a week after the sleepover, my son came home irritated and said Ryan had been telling people at practice that I lost it and started yelling at him over food. That's not how it happened, but once kids repeat something enough, it turns into the version everyone hears. According to my son, Ryan was saying he barely ate because I wouldn't let him have anything else. That part bothered me more than anything because there were literally containers of leftovers still in the fridge the next morning that nobody touched. At first I ignored it.
Kids exaggerate.
I figured it would burn itself out once something else happened. Instead, it spread sideways. One of the other parents sent me a message asking if everything was okay during the sleepover because their kids said things got uncomfortable. The message was polite, but it was clear they were trying to figure out if there was more to the story. I explained what actually happened, that there was plenty of food, and that the issue was the arguing, not the eating. They responded that it sounded like normal kid drama and left it there, but the fact they asked it all meant conversations were already happening behind the scenes. Then Ryan's mom messaged my wife on Facebook instead of talking to me again. My wife showed me the messages. It was written like concern, but it read more like she was building a case. She said Ryan felt singled out, that he was embarrassed in front of the other boys, and that I had raised my voice at him unnecessarily. My wife asked me again to walk her through everything because now she was hearing two versions. I told her the same thing I'd already said. She said she understood why I got frustrated, but that maybe calling him a brat escalated things. That annoyed me because by then it felt like the entire situation had been reduced to one word while everything leading up to it got ignored. 20 minutes of arguing somehow disappeared, and all that remained was me being the bad guy for reacting. A few days later, Ryan came over again briefly because the boys had to work on a school project together. I didn't say anything about what happened. I figured keeping things normal was the easiest way to move on. He barely acknowledged me when he came in. That was fine. They worked at the table while I was in the kitchen. At one point I heard him say, loud enough to carry, that some adults can't handle kids having opinions. It wasn't said directly to me, but it wasn't quiet either. I told him if he had something to say, he could say it directly instead of making comments across the room. He shrugged and said he was joking. The tone didn't sound like a joke. After he left, my son told me Ryan said his mom told him he didn't have to come over anymore if he felt uncomfortable. Somehow that turned into me being described as strict and mean to a couple of the other kids. Nothing huge, just small comments that kept getting back to me. Then things escalated again. Ryan's mom called me one evening, and this time she wasn't calm. She immediately started saying she'd heard from other parents and that people thought I overreacted. I asked who specifically because nobody had said anything to me directly. She avoided answering and kept repeating that her son felt unwelcome in my house. I told her I wasn't going to apologize for telling a kid to stop complaining after being told no multiple times. She said I shouldn't be hosting sleepovers if I couldn't be patient with kids. I said patience isn't unlimited when someone keeps pushing the same argument over and over. That's when the conversation stopped being civil. She said I embarrassed her son in front of everyone. I said her son embarrassed himself by refusing to drop it. She said I sounded arrogant. I told her she was turning something small into ongoing drama. She raised her voice and said I clearly didn't like her kid. I told her that wasn't true, but I didn't like being told how to run my own house after feeding everyone. At that point, we were both talking over each other. She said I had no right to insult her child. I said she had no right to keep rewriting what happened. She said other parents agreed with her. I said then they could talk to me themselves instead of passing messages around. The volume on both sides kept going up until we were basically just arguing instead of talking. She said she didn't want her son around someone who insults children. I said I didn't want to spend another evening arguing about dinner choices weeks after the fact. She said that attitude was exactly the problem. I said dragging this out was the problem. We hung up on each other. After that, things got awkward in ways that are hard to explain unless you've been around group activities with parents. Nobody said anything directly to my face, but conversation stopped when I walked up. A couple of parents were normal, a couple noticeably distant. My son picked up on it immediately and was frustrated because he said it felt like adults were making everything bigger than it actually was. He also told me Ryan had added comments on Snapchat about some parents thinking they're always right, which people assumed was about me. I didn't respond or bring it up because at that point anything I said would just add fuel. Update 2. For a while after my last post, nothing openly happened. It was just uncomfortable. Practices were quiet, conversations short, and people who used to stand around talking after games suddenly had somewhere else to be. My son kept telling me to just ignore it because he didn't want things to get worse, so that's what I did. I stopped engaging, stopped responding to anything secondhand, and figured eventually people would get bored. That lasted about 2 weeks. The turning point wasn't even directly between me and Ryan's mom at first. It started because the team parents were organizing rides and schedules through WhatsApp for an upcoming event. Normally it's just logistics, times, who's bringing what, that kind of thing. One evening someone mentioned making sure kids had food covered since it was going to be a long day. That somehow turned into a comment about making sure everyone feels comfortable eating. Nobody named me, but it wasn't subtle either. I ignored it at first. Then another parent replied saying kids should feel safe speaking up if they're uncomfortable at someone's house. Again, no names, but the implication was obvious. At that point I responded for the first time and said if anyone had an issue with me directly, they could talk to me instead of hinting at things in a group chat about scheduling. That's when it finally stopped being indirect. Ryan's mom replied that she wasn't hinting and that she still stood by what she said about how her son was treated. I said we had already discussed it privately multiple times and I wasn't interested in rehashing it publicly. She said it became public when multiple kids felt uncomfortable. I asked which kids, because no one had said that to me or my son. She didn't answer that part and instead said I raised my voice at a child and refused to acknowledge it. At that point I was frustrated enough that I stopped trying to keep things polite. I said I already acknowledged my voice wasn't calm by the end, but that it happened after repeated arguing and that the story being told now wasn't accurate. She said I was trying to justify insulting a kid. I said she was determined to make this bigger than it ever was. The messages went back and forth for a while before another parent stepped in and told everyone to move the conversation off the chat because it had nothing to do with scheduling. That stopped it publicly, but it didn't end it. A few days later, after practice, Ryan's mom approached me directly for the first time since the last phone call. She was already upset before she even started talking. She said she was tired of me minimizing what happened. I told her I was tired of having the same argument weeks later. Voices went up pretty quickly. Before I tell you what happened in this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment and tell us what you think about the story and how you would react. I want to hear your thoughts. She said I embarrassed her child and refused to take responsibility. I said I wasn't going to apologize for something that didn't happen the way she was describing it. She said other parents agreed with her. I told her if that was true, they could come talk to me themselves instead of letting it drag on through rumors. She said I was being defensive and aggressive. I said being accused repeatedly of something would make anyone defensive. At that point, we were both clearly yelling, not screaming, but loud enough that people nearby noticed. She said I shouldn't be around kids if that's how I handle frustration. I told her she didn't get to decide that because she was angry about one night that didn't go her way. She called me disrespectful. I told her constantly bringing it up weeks later was disrespectful to everyone else trying to move on. One of the other parents eventually stepped between us and told both of us to cool off because the kids were still around. That ended the argument right there, mostly because neither of us wanted to keep going in front of them. After that, things changed quickly. Ryan stopped coming over entirely, which honestly made things quieter for everyone. My son said they still talk at practice, but not much outside of it. A couple of parents who had been distant started acting normal again once it was clear the argument wasn't continuing. No big apologies, no big resolution. Just people moving on once it stopped being an ongoing topic. A week later, Ryan's mom sent one last message. Short and not friendly, but not aggressive either. She said it was probably best if their families just kept some distance going forward to avoid more issues. I replied that was fine. fine. That was the last direct contact we've had. Since then, practices have gone back to normal. Nobody brings it up anymore.
The end.
Ryan pulled the classic picky kid power move, turned "I only eat beige food" into a 25-minute TED Talk about why your perfectly normal share platter was basically child abuse. Staring at your daughter like she stole his birthright while she ate the last plain flatbread? Chef's kiss levels of petty. You ordered enough food to feed a small army, told everyone to dig in, then finally snapped and called the non-stop whining bratty after saying no 5 different ways. Not the classiest wording, but after 20+ minutes of circular but why no plain though bullshit from a guest in your house, most humans would have hit the same wall. His mom took that one word, brat, and ran a full scorched earth campaign. Group chat snipes, Facebook concern posts, practice lot yelling matches, Snapchat shade. Other parents agree. Ghost stories, the works. She turned a late-night flatbread standoff into a 6-week suburban blood feud like her kid was denied basic human rights instead of just having to eat a seasoned fry for once. Verdict. NTA the night it happened. You fed them, gave options, didn't have to play DoorDash roulette at 10 p.m. for one snowflake. Mild ESH by the bitter end because you both kept feeding the drama instead of letting it starve. But she's carrying 80% of the crazy here. You got annoyed and mouthy. She turned it into a one-woman crusade with receipts nobody asked for. Moral. Next sleepover, just preemptively order a sad little box of plain tortillas and call it the Ryan tax. Or better yet, invite literally anyone else.
Done.
Move on.
Block. Peace.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Got a story to share? Drop it in the comments and let us know which one was your favorite.